At my housewarming party, my mother raised her glass and announced, "Your $7,900 paycheck and bonus checks will go toward your brother's bills, or you lose this family." My chest tightened. I looked at Dad. He smiled, standing firmly behind her chair. I picked up my keys, walked out, and didn't look back. By morning, the family account had one name missing. The cutting board was still wrapped in cotton cloth when Odessa pressed it into my hands at the door. Walnut, dark, with grain lines that curved like a river seen from above. My grandfather sanded it with his own hands the summer before the stroke took his left side. Odessa held both my wrists and said nothing for 4 seconds. Then, "This is for your table, nobody else's." 22 people were already inside. My first house. A 3-bedroom townhouse off Birchfield Road, $215,000, 15% down, 30-year fixed. I saved for 4 years outside the family account to make that down payment. 4 years of double shifts at the oncology center, weekends calibrating linear accelerators while other people my age were at brunch. I bought it with money nobody could claim was theirs. I set it on the kitchen counter next to the wine glasses and the charcuterie board I made that morning. Odessa touched the walnut grain once with her thumb and walked inside to find her chair near the window. The party filled the rooms the way parties should. Kiara brought a cactus in a clay pot with a card that said "You did the thing." 2 co-workers from the radiation therapy department brought a card signed by the entire floor. Malcolm came with his wife and their 2 kids. His daughter spilled grape juice on the entryway tile within the first 10 minutes, and I wiped it up and told her it was fine because it was fine. For about an hour, it felt like what I wanted it to be. A beginning. My beginning. I had been depositing $1,500 a month into a joint savings account since I was 26. Mom opened it when I got my first real job at the oncology center and called it the family safety net. She said it would be there if any of us ever fell. I should have asked why I was the only one making deposits. 5 years of auto transfers. And not once did I log in and check the withdrawal column. I told myself it was trust. It was not trust. It was that checking meant asking a question, and asking a question meant maybe having to choose between my mother and my money. For 5 years, I paid $1,500 a month to not have to choose. That was the real cost. The number was just the receipt. Mom waited until the plates were out. The charcuterie was half-picked. The wine bottles had shifted around the counter. People were leaning against walls with paper plates, relaxed, settling into the part of a party where you stop performing and start actually talking. That is when Gail decided to perform. She stood near the kitchen island. She picked up her glass of white wine and tapped it with her ring finger, not a fork. Just her nail against the glass twice. The room got quieter in sections, the way rooms do when someone who considers herself in charge decides it is time for an announcement. "I want to say something." She smiled. The same smile she uses at church dinners when she wants the table to stop talking. Nyla has done well. We are all proud. But family takes care of family, and right now, Malcolm needs help. His truck payment, the rent, the credit card from the food truck. So starting next month, Nyla's $7,900 paycheck and any bonus checks she receives will go toward her brother's bills. That is how this family works. She said it like she was reading the weekly announcements at the parish office. Calm, administrative, like she was telling 22 people that the bake sale had moved to Saturday. Nobody moved. My coworker near the hallway set her plate on the bookshelf beside her, very carefully, as if noise would make this worse. Kiara was holding a cracker with brie on it and did not bring it to her mouth. Odessa looked at Gail from her chair near the window. Her hand tightened around the armrest until the veins on the back of her hand rose. I stood in the middle of the kitchen I had saved 4 years to buy, and my mother had just told a room full of people that my salary belonged to my brother. I almost said something. The words were right there, lined up behind my teeth, something about how I earned every dollar and nobody at that table had the right to reallocate my income like a church committee dividing the collection plate. But the room was watching, and Gail was performing, and I knew that if I fought her there, in front of everyone, she would frame it as proof that I was selfish. So I gave her nothing. No nod, no agreement, no reaction at all. And that silence was apparently the wrong kind, because Gail's smile dropped and she turned to me directly, the way she turns when she has already decided the conversation is over and the other person just has not realized it yet. You point a machine at sick people for a living, Nyla. You bought a house with 3 rooms and you sleep in one. Malcolm has a wife, 2 children, and $30,000 in debt. You have a mortgage and nobody waiting inside for you. So yes, your money goes to someone who actually built a family. 22 people heard that. My coworkers, who know how many certifications it takes to be trusted with a linear accelerator aimed at a human body. My best friend who helped me move every box into this house 2 weeks ago. My grandmother whose husband carved furniture by hand and whose granddaughter bought a home the same way, one payment at a time. Malcolm's wife who looked at the floor. Malcolm, who looked at his phone. I point a machine at sick people. That is what she said, and that is what 22 people heard. What I actually do is position a linear accelerator to deliver radiation to tumors while protecting the tissue around them. I hold a dosimetry certification. I calibrate equipment that costs more than the house we were standing in. The woman who called it pointing a machine at sick people filed donation envelopes 3 mornings a week at the parish office. Behind Gail's chair, Irving stood with his hands in his pockets. He smiled. One slow nod. That was his contribution. A smile and a nod while his wife demanded his daughter's entire income in front of a room full of witnesses, at a party the daughter paid for, in a house the daughter owned, over food the daughter prepared. My keys were on the counter. Right next to the cutting board nobody had looked at since Odessa set it down. I picked up the keys. I walked to the front door, opened it, stepped through, and pulled it shut behind me. No speech. No slam. Just the click of a latch and the sound of my shoes on the front steps. In my car, engine off, driveway of my own home, I opened the banking app. The recurring transfer was labeled Family Savings Auto, $1,500 a month, 15th of every month, for 60 consecutive months. I pressed cancel. The app asked if I was sure. I tapped confirm. The deposit scheduled for Sunday morning would not arrive. If you are hearing this story and something about it sounds familiar, if someone in your family treats your paycheck like a shared resource and your silence like consent, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded. More stories like this every week. I sat in the driveway for 6 minutes. Music played through the walls. Nobody came outside. Nobody texted. The party continued without the person who bought the house it was happening in. That night, at the same table where the charcuterie board sat 3 hours earlier, I opened my laptop and logged in to the joint savings account. The counters were still sticky with wine rings. The password was still Malcolm's birthday. Balance, $11,400. I sat with that number the way I sit with a dosimetry report that does not match the treatment plan. When the numbers are wrong in my job, someone gets hurt. I check them twice. I checked this twice. 60 months of deposits at $1,500 each is $90,000. $90,000 in. $11,400 remaining. $78,600 gone. I scrolled through the transaction history. The pattern was immediate and relentless. Monthly transfers out, each labeled in Gail's shorthand. Malcolm, rent. Malcolm, CC. Malcolm, truck note. Malcolm, storage. The amounts had no consistency and no ceiling. $800 one month, $2,400 the next. Some months had 2 withdrawals. February 3 years ago had 3, totaling over $5,000 in a single week. Whatever Malcolm owed, whatever bill came due, whatever Gail decided was an emergency, the account covered it. Kiara texted me from wherever she had gone after leaving the party. "Where are you?" No question mark. She already knew. She was at my door in 20 minutes, still wearing the jacket from the party. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, looked at the laptop screen and pulled it toward her without asking. She did not hug me. She did not tell me everything would be okay. She opened a blank spreadsheet on her phone, synced it to the laptop, and said, "Give me the dates." That is why Kiara has been my closest friend since college. She does not comfort first. She acts first and comforts after. She spends her days reading X-rays for the decay people cannot see yet, the shadow under a filling that looks fine on the surface, and she read the account the same way. A balance dropping while deposits stayed steady meant something was rotting underneath. We worked for 2 hours. I read the transactions aloud, date, amount, label, balance after. She typed. She is faster with data entry than anyone I know, and she did not pause to comment on a single number. Not when I read a $3,100 withdrawal labeled M Truck Repair 3 months after Malcolm's food truck business closed. Not when I read back-to-back withdrawals in the same week that totaled more than my monthly deposit. Not when the running balance dropped below $20,000 and kept falling. She typed and I talked and the spreadsheet grew like a medical chart for an account that had been bleeding for 5 years. At one point she stopped typing and said, "Say that last one again." February, 3 years ago. 3 withdrawals, $2,100, $1,400, and $1,800. Same week. Total, $5,300 in 7 days. She entered it. What was the balance after? $16,200. And your deposit that month? $1,500. Same as always. So she spent more than 3 times your deposit in 1 week, and the account kept shrinking, and you kept paying. She wrote the running total in the margin column and kept going. When we finished, the spreadsheet had 247 line items spanning 60 months. Total disbursed to Malcolm's bills, $64,200. Rent, credit cards, the food truck loan that collapsed after 4 months, car insurance, a storage unit on Eastland he still rented even though the equipment inside was worth less than the fees, and 11 entries labeled M Emergency with no further explanation. Kiara scrolled back to the deposit column. Who else put money in? I checked every deposit entry. 60 months. Every single one was mine. $1,500, 15th of every month, like a second rent payment leaving my checking account on autopilot. No deposits from Gail, none from Irving, none from Malcolm, not a dollar from anyone but me, not once in 5 years. Kiara leaned back in her chair and looked at the screen for a long time. Then she turned to me. Your mother opened a savings account, put your name on it, and spent $90,000 of your income over 5 years without telling you what it was buying. She turned the laptop so the screen faced me. She was not saving your family. She was running her household on your paycheck and calling it love. I closed the laptop. I told her I was going to the bank Monday morning. She asked if I wanted her to come. I said no. This was mine to do. She squeezed my shoulder at the door, said call me after, and left. I printed the spreadsheet and pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet from the oncology center. Then I went to bed in a house I owned, in a room I paid for, on a mattress bought with money that was actually mine. Monday morning, 9:10. I walked into the bank on Chestnut Avenue with my ID, my social security card, and the account number on a sticky note. The officer was a woman named Trainer. She pulled up the account, verified my identity, and asked what I needed. I want my name removed from the joint savings account, and I need confirmation that the auto deposit was canceled. The auto deposit was canceled Saturday evening at 10:47 p.m. I can see that here, she typed for a moment. And I can process the name removal today. You will receive a confirmation letter within 5 business days. How long does the removal take? About 10 minutes. I just need a signature on the authorization form. 6 minutes. That was how long it actually took. 1 form, 1 signature, 1 click on her end. Then the wall. "I should let you know," Trainer said, adjusting her glasses, "the account was opened by Gail as the primary holder. You were added as a secondary authorized user when the account was established. Under the account agreement, withdrawals made by the primary holder are considered authorized transactions." She paused. "If you are looking to dispute past withdrawal activity, the bank would not be able to process reversals on those transactions. Even if I was the only one depositing money, the account structure does not distinguish between depositors and withdrawers. The primary holder has full authorization regardless of funding source." I am sorry. I had walked in expecting recovery, a dispute, a freeze, an investigation. Instead, I learned that every dollar Gail withdrew was legal under the structure she designed. She chose primary. She assigned me secondary. The bank honored the arrangement exactly as written. But my name was still on the account for 6 more minutes. Before Trainer finalized the removal, I made one more request: full printed statements for all 60 months. Every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal, every balance update. "I can print those for you now, since you are still a named account holder," Trainer said. She typed a command, and the printer behind her desk started. Page after page. She collated them and slid the stack across in a manila folder with the bank logo on the front. 22 pages. I carried them to my car, set them on the passenger seat, and drove home without turning on the radio. At my kitchen table, I spread the pages edge to edge and read every line. I am trained to spot the number that does not belong, the value that should be 0 and is not. I applied that to 22 pages of my own financial history. Most withdrawals matched the spreadsheet Kiara and I built Saturday night. Malcolm's rent, credit cards, the food truck, the storage unit, $64,000 over 5 years. That part I already knew. Then I found the lines that had nothing to do with Malcolm. A charge for $4,200 to a jewelry store on Elmhurst Boulevard, dated March, 2 years ago. I put my finger on that line and held it there. I had been in that store with Gail the week before Easter, holding her purse while she tried on an emerald bracelet and asked the clerk the price. She set it back on the velvet tray and told me she would put it on layaway because it was too much to spend all at once. I believed her, because why would I not believe my own mother about a bracelet? She did not put it on layaway. She went back the following Tuesday and paid $4,200 from an account I funded. She wore it to Easter dinner 3 weeks later. She was wearing it when she demanded my paycheck. 14 months ago. A transfer for $7,400, labeled Irving CC Payoff. I read the label 3 times. My father's personal credit card balance, paid in full from an account that existed because I deposited $1,500 a month into it. Irving, who stood behind that chair at my housewarming and smiled. Irving, whose credit card debt was paid off by the daughter he publicly agreed should surrender her income. $7,400, and he never said a word. He just kept his hands in his pockets and nodded. Scattered across 3 years, miscellaneous charges to Gail's preferred department store. $2,800 total in small amounts. None large enough to notice inside a ledger full of Malcolm's rent and Malcolm's emergencies, which is exactly where Gail buried them. Small spending hidden inside large problems, filed so that no single line would trigger a question. $64,200 to Malcolm, $4,200 to jewelry, $7,400 to Irving, $2,800 to Gail's department store. Total, $78,600. Every dollar traced, every withdrawal sourced. The math was clean and the betrayal was exact. If this is hitting close to home, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded. New stories every week, and the people in these comments know what it feels like to count the money and find your own name missing from the ledger. Malcolm called that afternoon. His voice had the confused flatness of someone who had been told one version of a story for 5 years and could suddenly feel the walls of it shifting. Mom said the deposit did not go through, something about a bank error. She asked me to call you. How much did she tell you was in the account? She said there was enough for emergencies, that it was the family safety net. She said everyone contributed. Everyone contributed. That was the version Gail gave him. Everyone contributed, and the money flowed to whoever needed it, and the system was fair. Meanwhile, the deposit history showed 60 months of one name, one amount, one direction. Malcolm, there is no bank error. I canceled my deposit. I removed my name from the account. What? Why would you do that? Ask Mom what the balance is. Ask her who deposited. Then ask her what she bought at the jewelry store on Elmhurst 2 Marches ago. He went quiet. I could hear his daughter in the background asking for something and his wife answering. The sounds of the life my mother said justified taking my paycheck. I will call Mom, he said, and hung up. I do not know what that call sounded like. I do know that 4 hours later, Gail's Camry was in my driveway. Between Malcolm's call and Gail's arrival, I called Vickers, consumer law attorney. Kiara's sister used him for a landlord dispute 2 years ago, and he returned my call within an hour. I described the account structure, the primary versus secondary setup, the 5 years of sole deposits, the unauthorized personal spending, the jewelry, Irving's credit card. Vickers listened without interrupting. I could hear him writing. Then, bank recovery is off the table. Primary holder had full authorization, and the account terms will hold up in front of any judge. So we separate the money into 2 piles. 2 piles. Pile 1. The jewelry, your father's credit card, the department store charges. $14,400. Those are personal expenses that had nothing to do with any family purpose. She spent funds you deposited on herself and on your father, and she concealed it. That is conversion, and it is recoverable. That pile we go after hard. And the rest? The $64,000 that went to Malcolm's bills is harder. You deposited voluntarily into a joint account where she was primary. A defense attorney will argue you gifted it, that the family fund purpose was served, that you never objected for 5 years. We can still pursue it under an unjust enrichment theory, and the fact that you were the sole depositor helps, but I will be honest with you. A judge might give you the $14,000 and split the difference on the rest. You could walk away with somewhere between $15,000 and $40,000, not the full amount. I sat with that. The full number was $90,000 in my head, $78,600 gone, and the man I hired was telling me I might recover half of that, maybe less. The demand letter goes out for the full $78,600, Vickers said. That is the opening number, and the personal charges anchor it, when they see conversion in writing next to your mother's signature at a jewelry store. Most people settle before a courtroom, but I do not sell fantasies. The clean win is the 14-4. The rest is a fight. Send it for the full amount. I will have it ready this week. Monday evening, 6:30. The kitchen smelled like coffee and highlighter ink. I was rinsing a mug when I heard the engine. Gail drives a silver Camry with a dent above the rear left wheel from a parking garage pillar 2 years ago. Irving was in the passenger seat. They walked up my driveway with the posture of people who believe they are about to fix a problem. They expected to sit their daughter down, explain that family does not work this way, and leave with the deposit reinstated by bedtime. The bank statements were already on my kitchen table. I had spent the afternoon with a pack of highlighters, yellow for Gail's personal spending, pink for Irving's credit card, blue for Malcolm's bills. Every withdrawal circled, every total tallied in the margin. By 5 p.m., the table looked like a financial autopsy, performed on the same surface where I served bruschetta 40 8 hours ago. Kiara was in the kitchen. She had come straight from her shift, still in scrubs, and she leaned against the counter near the sink with her arms at her sides. She said nothing when they knocked. She did not need to say anything. She was there, and she was watching, and that was enough. I opened the door. Gail was wearing the emerald bracelet. $4,200 of my income on her left wrist, catching the porch light like a receipt she could not take off. Malcolm's rent is due Friday. You need to put the deposit back on. She walked past me into the living room. Irving followed. He scanned the room and his eyes landed on the kitchen table covered in paper. He stopped. "Sit down," I said. Gail sat. She saw the pages, the colors, the circles, the margin math. She did not pick anything up. Irving stood behind the second chair. "What is this?" 60 months of bank statements. I sat across from her. I deposited $90,000 over 5 years. The balance is $11,400. $64,200 went to Malcolm. $14,400 went to you and Dad. I pushed the highlighted pages toward her, yellow first, then pink. Irving looked down at the pink sheet. $7,400, his name printed next to the transfer label, his credit card, his daughter's money. He pulled the chair out and sat down, and the chair legs on tile were the loudest thing in the room. "Everything was for the family," Gail said. Her voice had already shifted from demanding to explaining, which is what people do when evidence is on the table and emotion is not enough anymore. She said the word family like it was supposed to close the conversation, like the word itself was a door she could shut on the numbers in front of her. "You said I point a machine at sick people. You were right. I do. And for 5 years, every dollar I earned doing it went into an account you spent on a $40,200 emerald bracelet and Dad's credit card and called it family." I looked at her wrist. She saw me look. She did not cover it. She did not take it off. She wore it to the confrontation the same way she wore it to Easter. Green stone catching the kitchen light. A receipt she could not remove without admitting it was one. Irving opened his mouth. I held up one hand. "Your credit card, Dad, $7,400. Paid from an account funded entirely by my paycheck. You knew where the money came from, and you stood behind a chair on Saturday and smiled while Mom demanded more of it." Irving closed his mouth and folded his hands in his lap. Gail leaned forward. "You do not understand the pressure your brother is under. The food truck failed. The rent is late every month. His wife cannot work because of the children. Someone had to step in. Someone did. Me. For 60 months. 60 deposits, not one from you, not one from Dad, not one from Malcolm. And nobody told me $4,200 of it went to your jewelry and $7,400 went to Dad's visa. That bracelet was a birthday gift to myself. One time, one purchase, from an account funded by my paychecks. You did not give yourself a gift. You took one from your daughter and put it on your wrist." Gail looked at Irving. Irving was still looking at the pink highlighted page, and his lips were pressed together in a thin line, and he did not look up. He had not spoken a single word since entering the house. "Irving, say something," Gail said. He looked at the page. He looked at me. Then, quietly, I thought the account was for Malcolm. "Your credit card is not Malcolm, Dad. $7,400 is not Malcolm's rent or Malcolm's truck. That is your visa bill, paid with my money." He turned the pink page over so the highlighted side faced the table. That was his contribution. "Grandma brought me a cutting board from a walnut tree your father carved before his stroke. You brought me an invoice." Gail's shoulders stiffened. She turned back to me and her voice dropped lower, the way it drops when she is about to say something she thinks will end the conversation. "I raised you. I fed you. I drove you to every appointment and every school event and every part-time job for 18 years. And you sat in this house at your party and let me talk. And now you are going to sit here and tell your own mother she is a thief in front of your grandmother. You will regret this, Nyla. When Malcolm's kids ask where their aunt went, you will regret it." That one landed, not because it was true, but because it named the thing I had not let myself think about. Malcolm's kids. The two of them at my housewarming, the grape juice on the tile, the fact that whatever I did to Gail, I was also doing to a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old who had done nothing. I felt it in my chest, and I did not let it show on my face, but it was there, and Gail saw enough of it to lean in. "You are right," I said. "I will think about those kids for a long time. That is on you, not me. You spent their aunt's money on a bracelet, and now you want to hand me the guilt for the bill coming due." I tapped the yellow highlighted sheet. 4,200, jewelry store, Elmhurst Boulevard. Your signature on the withdrawal form. You did that, not me. Gail did not respond to that. She sat there, and for the first time since she walked in, the room was completely silent. Not the silence of people waiting for someone to speak, the silence of someone realizing the other person has documentation. 90,000 in, 11,000 left. You called it family. I call it theft. The account is closed. Kiara shifted her weight at the counter but did not speak. Gail's wine glass, the one she had brought in her purse, tilted sideways in her right hand. White wine pooled on the countertop and ran toward the edge. She did not look down. She did not wipe it. Her eyes stayed on the yellow page, the jewelry charge circled twice, and she stared at it the way people stare at a document that holds a fact they thought was buried. "We will pay you back." Her voice had thinned to something I barely recognized. 20,000. Over time. Just put the deposit back on. I picked up the full stack of highlighted statements, 22 pages, 60 months, $78,600 in yellow and pink and blue, and slid them across the table toward her. I did not say a word. I had said enough. The paper had been talking since they sat down. Gail stood up from the kitchen chair and moved to the couch, but she did not sit on the cushion. She sat on the arm, the narrow wooden arm that was not built for sitting, and she balanced there like someone who had walked into a room and could not remember which piece of furniture was meant for people. Her thumb found the edge of her phone case and started pressing the silicone ridge, back and forth, a motion without direction or end. The front door opened. Odessa walked in. She does not knock at family homes. She never has. I had called her that afternoon and told her to come at 7. She was 15 minutes early, which meant she had been sitting in her car on Birchfield Road. Waiting, she stood in the kitchen doorway for 3 seconds, reading the scene the way a woman who has seen 60 years of family trouble reads a room. The highlighted pages, Gail on the arm of the couch, Irving with folded hands and a pink sheet face down, Kiara motionless at the counter, the wine still pooling near the edge of the countertop. Odessa did not ask what happened. She walked to the table, picked up the page with the $4,200 jewelry charge, held it at arm's length, and looked at Gail. "This is the emerald bracelet you wore to Easter." Gail did not answer. She looked at the floor. The phone case ridge pressed against her thumb. Back and forth. Odessa set the page down on the table, face up, and stepped back. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. The 6 words had done more damage than a lecture, because Odessa was the one person in that family whose opinion Gail could not dismiss, and the opinion was on the table in yellow highlighter. I stood. "The account is closed. My name is off it. My attorney will send the demand this week. You can leave." They left. Gail first. She did not look at Odessa on the way out. Irving followed. He paused at the doorframe for half a second, and his eyes went to the counter where the walnut grain sat under the kitchen light, or maybe to nothing at all, and then he pulled the door shut behind him. The Camry's engine turned over, and the dent above the rear left wheel rolled down Birchfield Road until the taillights disappeared. Wednesday, Odessa held a family meeting at her house on Trenton Street. She did not invite me. She was keeping my name out of a room where it would have become the subject instead of the evidence. Irving's brother Russell was there. 2 of Irving's cousins. Gail, Irving, Malcolm was not invited. Odessa sat in her wingback chair by the front window and spoke without notes. Your daughter deposited $90,000 into an account over 5 years. You spent it on your son's rent, your own credit card, and a piece of jewelry you wore to my Easter table. Your father built furniture with his hands. You built a bill. Russell looked at Irving. Irving studied the baseboard beneath Odessa's shoe. You are not welcome at Thanksgiving until the demand is addressed. Both of you. Gail opened her mouth. Odessa raised one finger. I am not finished. You announced your daughter's salary at her own housewarming in front of 22 people and told her to hand it over. In her own house. At her own table. While eating food she paid for. That is not family. That is a shakedown. Russell shifted his weight from one foot to the other and looked at Irving one more time, the way a brother looks at a brother when the facts are too clear for loyalty to cover. The cousins examined their own hands. One of them, Deanne, stood up quietly and walked to the kitchen. She came back with a glass of water and set it near Odessa's elbow without saying a word. Nobody in that room argued with Odessa. Nobody ever has. And nobody was going to start on the day she laid 5 years of bank statements across the moral center of the family table. If you have made it this far, you already know why these stories matter. Subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Vickers sent the demand letter Thursday, certified mail. $78,600, addressed jointly to Gail and Irving. It arrived at the same kitchen where Gail had spent 5 years managing the account like a private treasury, deciding which bills got paid and how much of her daughter's income to redirect. The letter outlines 60 months of deposits, the full withdrawal history, the personal charges, and a 60-day window. Without my $1,500 a month flowing in, the account would reach zero by December. Malcolm's January rent had no source. Gail had built a system with one revenue stream, and that stream was my paycheck, and I turned it off. A separate letter went to Malcolm, not a demand, an accounting. $64,200 in benefits received from an account funded solely by his sister's income. For your records, the letter said, nothing else. He read it at his kitchen table, and I know he read it twice because he called me 2 weeks later and said so. Irving called once. A Tuesday evening, 2 weeks after the confrontation. Your mother is not sleeping. Neither was my account. He breathed once through his nose. The line went quiet. I let the silence sit, the same way I let it sit in the living room when the pages were on the table. He hung up without another word. The bank flagged the account for a compliance review after my removal. Gail received a letter requesting updated documentation, proof of current authorized signatories, and a written explanation for the withdrawal pattern over 60 months, not a freeze, but the kind of letter that does not go away when you put it in a drawer. It sits there. It waits. 3 weeks after the confrontation, a Saturday morning in late November, my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Linden, stopped me at the mailbox and said Irving's truck had driven past my house that morning. He slowed near the mailbox, looked at the kitchen window where the light was on, sat there with his foot on the brake for about 15 seconds, then kept driving. She watched him head toward the hardware store on Route 9 and come back 20 minutes later, empty-handed. He was not shopping. He was driving past a kitchen window because the kitchen behind it was not his to walk into anymore. The cutting board sat on my counter, darker now, knife marks and olive oil from 3 weeks of daily use. Not displayed behind glass, not saved for company. Used, I sliced an avocado on it that morning, laid 2 pieces of sourdough beside it, poured coffee from the pot I started at 7. 1 plate, 1 mug. The house was quiet, but the quiet was mine, full of things I chose. The couch I picked out alone. The curtains Kiara helped me hang. The tomato plants Odessa set on the back porch without explanation, because planting something edible in your granddaughter's yard is what you do when the soil is ready. No glass raised. No toast. No announcement. Nobody behind a chair deciding where my paycheck goes. The mortgage is mine. The paycheck is mine. The table is mine. Vickers negotiated through January. Gail's lawyer did exactly what he predicted. He argued the $64,000 was a gift, that I deposited it freely, that no court would call 5 years of silence a dispute. On the personal charges, he had nothing, because there is no innocent explanation for paying your husband's visa with your daughter's money and buying yourself a bracelet on top of it. We settled the personal pile in full, and a fraction of the rest, $31,200, paid over 18 months, signed and notarized. Not the whole 90, but every dollar of it came out of the pile they thought they had buried. Gail still wears the emerald bracelet to church. She paid for it twice now, once from my account and once from the settlement. And she still will not take it off. I do not expect her to. Irving did not hide behind the settlement. 2 weeks after the papers were signed, Russell drove him to my house on a Sunday. Irving stood on my porch, would not come in, and told me he had cashed out part of his retirement to cover his share of the judgment ahead of schedule. Then, he said the only real sentence he has ever said to me. I saw the number on the page, and I could not look at it. He did not ask to be forgiven. He asked if he could still come to Thanksgiving if Odessa allowed it. I told him that was Odessa's table, not mine. He nodded, went back to Russell's truck, and did not knock again. Malcolm called once, on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was between patients. I did not know it was all from you. I thought everyone put in. Maybe that was true. Or maybe a grown man whose rent and truck and credit cards were paid by someone else for 5 years chose not to ask which someone, because the answer was easier not to know. I did not say that to him. I said, now you do. He is looking for full-time work. His wife filed for assistance last month. I do not know if he will find something that covers what the account used to cover. That is not my problem anymore. It never should have been. Odessa calls every Sunday. She came over last week, ran her hand across the walnut surface on my counter, and said he would be proud of this kitchen. She did not mention Gail. She did tell me the Thanksgiving list this year is short, and that the list is hers to make. And every morning, that walnut surface holds breakfast. Dark grain, knife marks, my grandfather's hands in every curve. Odessa was right. It is for my table, nobody else's.